So I've made a list of things that make up neutral, and those are the things I'm going to be going over today. So we're going to talk about the ultimate end goal. The ultimate end goal here is to talk about footsies, right? Like, what are footsies? Why are they important to Street Fighter? How do I use footsies? How do I make my own footsies? Things like this, right? But to get there, to get to footsies, we're going to have to go through having a game plan, right? So even before that, we're going to have sequences that add up to a game plan. We're going to have to know the difference between poking, counter poking, and whiff punishing. And then we're going to have to know what buttons are strong for what, right? So what is a good poke? What is a good counter poke? What is a good whiff punish tool? And after that, we're going to have to learn how to identify our spacing, and we're going to have to learn about what the wiggle is. Once we learn about spacing and the wiggle, we're going to have to learn about rhythm and application of those previous previous four things. And then once we understand that, we can add those all together and get footsies, right? However, it is important to note that footsies is only one aspect of neutral. And when you are in a neutral state like this, there are many other things you can do. Alright, let's cut the music. Actually, let's cut the music. Yeah, cut the music. Are we going to cut the overlay? I don't think the overlay is quite in the way. If the overlay gets in the way, we'll cut it. But for now, just for sake of ease, we'll leave the overlay. All right, we cut the music. Okay, let us begin. So like I was saying, before we get to footsies, right, we're gonna have to take a bunch of steps backwards, and that starts with sequences and game plans, right? So in Street Fighter, it's really difficult to do anything, especially have a competent, well put together, thought out neutral game without a game plan. If you play without an overall game plan, you're just going to be lost, right? And the way you build up a game plan is a lot less complicated than it would seem. Because at first it would seem like, well, I can do a billion things, right? I can go up, I can go back, I can go forward, I can go up, forward. They can do all this, I can block, I can press this button, that button. You know, I have all these special moves. Look at all this infinite distances I can be from the opponent. What do I even do, right? That, when you're juggling with that, all those, infinite possibilities, it gets really hard to do anything. So you want to just start by, in a way, limiting your own options and having a game plan, right? And the way we build up a game plan is with sequences. Now, a sequence is basically a set of actions that you have practiced before, right? You can come up with sequences on the fly, but generally, you want to have some pre-canned sequences in your repertoire so you can dedicate the rest of your mental processing power to observing the opponent, right? So, for example, we can put together a sequence that's just a combo into some sort of pressure, right? So, here we have Ken and Chun-Li. Let's say we'll do this combo, right? Now this is my sequence, right? That's obvious. I dash up, I get to do Oki, I can go for that combo again, right? This is a sequence that flows into itself. This is obvious. When most people think of a sequence, they think of like an Oki setup or something like that, right? But you can also have sequences that don't involve combos, right? So for example, I could walk up and walk back, right? This could be part of my game plan. Like I could walk up, see what the opponent does, and walk back into a space that's safe for me to throw my fireball, right? I could do this as a sequence, right? Another sequence I could have is, well, I'm going to throw 2 fireballs in a row and then do nothing, right? And then I'm going to go 2 fireballs in a row again and do nothing, right? So these you have these pre-canned sequences, and these are really important, right? Not only can you have you can have preemptive sequences like I'm talking about here, but you can also have reactionary sequences too. Like for example, after I block Chun-Li's Kikoken, right? Say I block a light Kikoken, what do I do? Right? What do I do? This is where you can also apply a pre-canned practice sequence, right? This is especially powerful in Street Fighter V when someone has like a -2 move, right? You need to have some idea of what you want to do after these situations, right? So you take these sequences and you add them up into a game plan, right? So again, a sequence is just a set of actions you've practiced in any given situation, right? So let's go back to this, right? So this is one sequence. Okay, let's build a game plan off of this sequence, right? So it's just this combo into a dash forward into, I don't know, this combo again, right? It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be super strong, but you can make a game plan out of any set of sequences, right? So this is a very simple, very obvious one. Almost every character has a sequence like this where you do a combo into a knockdown and you get some sort of Oki, right? So our goal is to land this combo and repeat this sequence over and over, okay? Let's just say that's our goal, right? Well, now, this basic game plan, this basic goal, will inform every other aspect of the way we play. So, like I was talking about in the beginning, how it's so hard to figure out just what to do in any given situation. Well, now that we have a goal, we basically strip away all the extraneous options and we can focus in on making our goal become a reality, and that is going to make everything so much easier, right? So how does this sequence start? It starts with landing a jab, right? So what do we need to get the jab? Well, we need to be close. We need to be close enough for this, right? So this informs our neutral game. We need to walk up, or we need to jump to get close, or we can dash and then walk a little bit, right? But we know we need to get close. So how can we do that? Well, we come up with a sequence for getting in, right? So for example, we could walk back and follow a fireball, right? Or we could use a jump hurricane kick, or we could just straight up dash. A more complex idea would be, okay, I'm going to feint several normals to get them to block, and then I'm going to try to move forward or dash when I see them blocking, right? Something like that. So let's just say we're just going to walk up, right? Well, if we just walk up, we're going to get hit. So we need to walk and block, right? We just need to inch our way up, and then once we get there, we can start doing our sequence, right? But wait a minute. What if they block? Okay, that's no problem. Let's look for another sequence that leads off of that, right? Because our whole game plan is just to land this combo into this dash up into the combo again, right? So what happens if they block? Well, if they block, we still hit jab on them. So our jab enables us to do a few things. We could do a staggered pressure, right? We could do a staggered pressure like this and see if it opens them up. We could mix this up between tick throw. We could tick throw or continue with the staggered pressure, right? We can also frame trap. This is basically a very convenient frame trap built into Ken's kit, right? And a lot of characters have things like this. This idea is not really Ken specific, right? So, okay, we have this one sequence we know how to do, which is this combo into DP, into dash forward into Oki, right? Let's make that our game plan, right? It's just to get that sequence, that Oki right there. Okay, so how do we get into that? Well, we need to walk up to get jab. So let's just choose walking and blocking because the easiest, safest option. It might be a little bit slow, but this is non-complex. We can just inch our way up. Once we get close, we can go for this hit. And we know that if it doesn't hit, we're still plus, so we can go for a frame trap, or we can go for a throw. After this throw, we can go back to walking and blocking up again, and go for the jab again. And if it hits, alright, we go into our Oki, which leads back into this situation, or we go for our tick throw, or our staggered pressure, or our frame trap, right? So, starting with one simple sequence, one thing we knew how to do, right? We can build up a game plan off of that, right? So we have a goal, we have a set of sequences, we stack our sequences together so we can get to our goal, right? That is something you need to think about and something you need to know how to do before you can even begin to play neutral game. Because if you play without an objective, you're going to get lost real quick, and it's going to get hard for you to do pretty much anything. You're going to be on the back foot, being reactionary 99% of the time, and it is very, very difficult to play reactionarily 99.9% of the time. You can do it in some instances and sometimes, but if that is the basis of your gameplay, you're going to have a rough time. Right. So those are sequences and game plans. We just need to have a simple game plan, build out of some sequences we know how to do, right? That's going to inform how you approach the neutral game. Because when you get into neutral, if you have no objective, like I was saying before, not to sound like a broken record, if you have no objective, it's going to be really almost impossible to do anything in neutral. So you need to start, even before you start the match, a lot of players will look and be like, oh, okay, I know what to do in this matchup. This is strong. This is strong, right? This is weak here. I know this character likes to do this, right? That is the forming of a game plan, right? You need to have a game plan before you can even begin to play neutral. Hey, Blue Ice, thanks for the host, man. I see you. Thanks. Big appreciation. I might be kind of rushing past that. That's a very dense topic. But I just want to try to touch on everything here, right? Okay. So, that's non-character specific, right? You just have a simple game plan built up from some sequences you know how to do. That's how you make a game plan. Once you have that, it informs how you want to play neutral, right? Your game plan will let you know if you want to be more reactionary, more defensive, more proactive, more offensive, somewhere in between. It will also let you know what spacing you prefer, right? It will let you know what buttons out of your character's vast, I say vast, even though Street Fighter V has a very limited number of moves, vast move set, right? That game plan is extremely important, and to make a game plan, you build it up from sequences. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. Alright, moving on now. Yo, what's up, Jax? How should a newbie Ken act when his opponent is waking up in the corner? It depends on what you want to do. But right now, that's really the answer to that. It just depends on what you want to do. There are a lot of okazeme options you can do, right? Basically, you want to try to extend that situation. You want to try to make that situation better for yourself, because if you have them knocked down, you have a great advantage, right? So you want to try to do something that extends that advantage. There's a lot. You can go for a button, you can go for a throw, you can go for a shimmy, right? It really depends on the opponent and the situation. Generally, the safest thing to do is just try to go for a button that goes into a combo, right? So, you know, let's actually double down on this. We were talking about sequences and game plans, right? So let's actually backtrack and extrapolate on that more. All right. So, if you're asking what to do in the corner, this means that you need to have a game plan, right? If you don't know what to do, you have no predetermined goal you have nothing established for yourself, right? This is a sign that you don't have an overall game plan. Okay, so to get a game plan is a lot easier than you would think, right? Just pick something, right? So for example, this is a simple combo that leads into Okazeme, right? So we can just dash up again and go for it again, right? It doesn't have to be perfect, but this is just something we know how to do, right? This is not a perfectly timed meaty. It doesn't work versus every wake up. That doesn't really matter, right? What we need is just a set of actions, a sequence to aim for. So let's choose this sequence, right? Now, if they're in, say we get them to the corner, right? Well, we can just go for this sequence again. We can just go for this again, right? It's not optimal, but we can. So by making a simple game plan, just saying, okay, I'm going to hit them with Shoryuken after my target combo, knock them down, and go for it again, right? That's our game plan, is just to go for this. Boy, that was incredibly easy, right? Like, I just chose a sequence I know how to do, and I made that my end goal, right? This might not be the most optimal thing, but now I'm confident and I know what to do. And this, having this end goal in mind, is going to strengthen the rest of my play by nature of removing extraneous options, basically, right? This is going to enable me to do all that complicated Street Fighter stuff a lot easier. So when you ask, like, what should I do when my opponent's in the corner? My answer and your answer should be, well, execute your game plan, right? What did you want to do, right? There's a lot of things you can do that are optimal, suboptimal, and a lot of those things are going to depend on the context, right? So try to further your game plan, right? That might sound a little vague and non-specific. Well, it's not exactly vague or non-specific, but it might sound a little out there in the moment. But if you have a goal, a set plan to perform, it's going to inform every single other aspect of the way you play, and it's going to make your decision making a lot easier. Hey, what's up, Peaches? I see you. So let's say, all right, this is my plan. This is a sequence I know how to do, right? I'm going to need to find other sequences that lead into this based off of my opponent's reaction, right? So let's say I hit them, I can dash up and I can try it again, right? Well, to get there in the first place, I need to be close. How can I get close? Okay, I need to choose a way to get close. I could jump, I could dash, I can use my command dash, I can walk and block, I can just straight up walk up, right? I can mix between all of these options if I want. I can throw normals. I can follow behind my fireball to move my way into this situation, right? I just need to choose one. So I'm just going to choose walk and block because it's safe and simple and easy, and eventually I'll get close enough if I chill out, right? So let's say I walk and block my way up here, and they block my punch, right? So damn, okay, my game plan was thwarted by my opponent blocking, right? I walked my way into range for this, but I can't do this combo because they're blocking. Well, we're plus here, right? This is a plus move. So now we have another option. What sequences do I know that start in this situation, that start off the jab? Well, I know I can do a staggered pressure by jabbing them over and over again and try to confirm my hit or a counter hit, right? I can do like one of these, right? I can go for a tick throw, or I can fake them out and bait a throw, right? Okay, let me just choose two, just to keep it simple, right? So if they block right here, I'm gonna go for a throw. Okay, that's all. That's it. That's a simple solution. Well, now they're knocked down, right? They're knocked down. I get to start over again at my first sequence, which is walking forward and blocking. So sequence number 1 is walking forward and blocking. Sequence number 2 is going for jab, and then deciding which other sequence to go into. So I can go into my tick throw, or I can go into my combo into uppercut, which leads back into sequence number 1. You see how I took all these sequences, these things I know how to do, these predetermined actions I've come up with beforehand, like mental chunks or mental blocks, and I stack them together to get to my end goal, right? This is what you need to do before you can play neutral, right? And in any situation, if you're ever asking yourself, man, I don't know what to do here, what should I do? You need to take a step back and go, wait a minute, what was my original game plan? What was my end goal? What did I say for myself? This is what I'm going to do, right? Before the match even begins, before second number 99, you need to have some sort of goal in mind, right? And, every strong player does this. They think, okay, all right, this is my matchup knowledge, this is that, this is strong, this is weak. I'm going to try to go for this. All of neutral, all of footsies, all of the complex Street Fighter stuff starts with a simple game plan, and you put game plans together from sequences, right? And everybody knows a bunch of sequences. You know tons of sequences. You practice them in training mode, right? They're your combos, they're your Oki setups, they're ways you move, right? You can get as complicated or as simple with these as you want, right? But the idea behind making your game plan up of sequences is that since you've already practiced them, you don't really need to create them so much on the fly as you just need to apply them. And what that does is it saves you mental power, mental processing space to observe your opponent and make reads and reactions and things like that. So, again, the simplest form of a sequence is like an Oki setup, right? Everybody knows those. But you also need to have sequences after your opponent's actions, right? So let's say we block Kikoken. What do? Right? Do we just want to back up? Right? Do we want to be aggressive? Do we want to press a button? Do we want to V reversal? Right? These are things we can find out in training mode. Right? Like what do you do after you block Kikoken? What do you do after you block Rashid's spinning mixer? What do you do after you block Mika's charged hard kick? Right? You need to have sequences for these situations, practice, ideas, and sets of actions that you're going to perform planned out ahead of time, right? So, like, for example, we know if a move is -2, we can take our turn back. So we can press jab, right? Or, wait a minute, what if we have more resources? Well, we can just go for this frame trap and do EX Fireball. Right? Oh, so this is a sequence unique to when I have an EX bar. Okay, I have options here. Or I could take my turn by walking backwards, right? And based on the character matchup, you'll learn what is a powerful thing to do and what is a weak thing to do. But you need to start with something, right? Do you need to have this for every character at first? No, not necessarily. There are a lot of general situations that happen in Street Fighter that, like, you can apply multiple things to. So, like, for example, oh, my opponent did a minus move, right? Like, for example, let's have Chun-Li do the slide, right? We know that this is minus, okay? We know that this is minus enough for our jab. So we can just do this. We can just press jab, right? We can just do jab into combo. You could do this for every minus move. You could press jab afterwards. Would it be the strongest or most optimal thing to do? Not really, because this move is minus enough for us to use medium punch, which means we can get more damage, right? You can get more damage if you use medium punch, but we can go for jab too, right? So a beginner might just say, okay, I'm just going to do jab after every move I know is minus, right? And we know that, wait a minute, if we have a basic game plan that's going to be to get into this sequence, right? Hey, that starts with jab. Wait a minute, that feeds into our overall plan. Okay, so let's say this is my first time playing against Chun-Li, and during the middle of the match, I just happened to learn that this is a minus move, right? I don't know, I just test it out. And I go, oh, wait a minute. Okay, so boom, now I'm back into my overall game plan, right? Then you see how you want to try to pick sequences that feed into each other? If my game plan is to land that uppercut, right? Why would I do something like sweep, right? Why would I know that, right? Why would I do this? This doesn't go into my game plan, does it? I'd have to, well, I suppose it leaves me close enough for jab, but why when I can just go immediately to what I had planned out before, right? So there's a gazillion options we could do. Like, why would I do that? Right? That's not part of my game plan. Let me just go straight for what my game plan is. Right? And you can see that off of this move, I have like a jillion sequences I can do. Right? I can do all sorts of fancy, crazy stuff. Right, I can go for mix-ups, I can do my overhead feints, I can do this, I can run cancel, I can go for throws, I can go for ambiguous 50-50 stuff, right? But if I have that game plan, if my game plan is to just go, okay, I'm going to do this, I want to get into this sequence I have practiced before, everything else falls into place. The simplicity of decision-making is so valuable, right? You want to have a game plan. And, you know, as a beginner or like a newbie, your game plans are not going to be optimal, but that doesn't matter. It's the technique of creating them and juggling them around mentally and figuring out situations before the match begins in training mode, right? By watching replays. You're going to come up with these ideas like, okay, after this happens, I'm going to do this, right? And that's going to simplify your decisions and give you a lot of confidence in decision making. And it's going to make it so you don't miss a beat. And it's going to enable you to basically sort through infinite options to a finite set, which is going to give you the ability to play neutral, right? Now that might sound complex, but it's really not. It's actually really, really simple. It's just made up of a lot of parts. Okay, so we went over sequences and game plans, right? So let's just say we have a basic game plan. It doesn't matter what it is. We just have one, right? Now let's talk about poking, counter poking, and whiff punishing, right? Everyone knows about neutral and footsies and stuff like that, right? So we want to do that. We know of those. How do we begin by doing those? Well, we need to know the difference between a poke, a counter poke, and a whiff punish, right? So a poke is a button you throw out first, right? So right now, because Chun-Li is doing nothing and I'm doing medium punch, I am poking, right? I am poking. This is me going first. I am first to poke, right? If Chun-Li, let's say Chun-Li was doing down medium kick as a poke, right? And I'm going, okay, she's doing down medium kick. I anticipate her to down medium kick, right? So I'm going to hit this button either at the same time or a little preemptively to counter her medium kick. I know she's going to open herself up, right? This is a counter poke, right? If I throw this out to try to counter that, I'm still first. I'm still first, or I'm at the same time, right? You see the timing on that? That's a counter poke, right? I'm intentionally attempting to counter her button. I could get a counter hit or I could not, But the idea is that I'm going to take the initiative, right? So if I'm poking, right? I'm not necessarily anticipating to hit them with a button, hit their button or anything right like that, right? If I see them using a button and I still want to be preemptive and proactive and take the initiative, I can attempt to counter poke that button, right, by going at the same time or still going first, right? A whiff punish, right? A whiff punish would be punishing their move after it's whiffed, right? So I'm going second, right? So if Chun-Li is doing this, I can attempt to whiff punish it, this is a difficult move to whiff punish, but I could attempt to by waiting for it to whiff, right? That is basically the difference between those three things. It's the timing and the intention. And that timing and that intention is very important, right? So let's go back. Hey, what's up, Mofosny? I see you. We're talking about neutral. So let's talk about poking first, right? Now that we know that poking is taking the initiative, going first, not necessarily looking to counter an opponent's move, right? So I'm poking, right? This is me going first. I'm poking with stuff. I can poke with any attack. Any attack can be a poke, right? Whether it's a good poke or a bad poke is up to the context of the situation and your character and the matchup and things like that. But poking is going first, right? What are my objectives with poking? What is my intention with poking, right? My objective, or any player's strong objective. Hey, what's up, D-Ghost? I see you. Any player's objective with poking, if they have a game plan, which means they're going to have informed and this is not exactly the correct usage of the term, but solid neutral, right? They're going to have an idea of what they want to do. Your objective with poke is to feed back into your overall game plan, right? So, for example, earlier we were talking about how a basic game plan would be just to get into this sequence, right? This is a basic game plan. A lot of characters have a special move that goes to knockdown, right? This is our goal. This is our game plan, is to get into this sequence and do it over and over again, right? So if I'm at neutral, right, neither of us have an advantage. I'm at neutral, and I want to poke, right? I want to poke. How do I choose what poke to do? What is my objective with the poke? It's the feedback into my overall game plan. So now, instead of looking at all my character's zillion moves, all I have to do is find the ones that are going to go into my game plan, right? Okay, so first I need to walk up to get this jab, right? We know that from just exploring our basic game plan. So our first sequence is going to be walking, right? But let's say we want to poke here too. Okay, well, we could poke with jab, right? This might make them hesitant to press a button if we constantly just ha, ha, ha. Oh, I'm close now. Time for my game plan of this into throw or this into combo, right? Which will lead me back into landing this sequence. But the jab is not super powerful, right? Ken's jab, it doesn't really cover a lot of... I mean, it covers an okay amount of space, but it's not out there for very long. It has low priority, the hitbox, and all this stuff, right? So let's try to find another one, right? Well, I know I want to walk up. I could do this, right? This doesn't seem too bad. This is plus. It's got a pretty decent hitbox. It goes okay distance, right? This is probably something we can do. We can even walk up behind it. It's plus on block, plus on hit, right? We could even put this into a special move if we wanted to. Well, what about this one? Well, this has high priority, but it's very, very slow. And it has a lot of recovery, right? Same thing with this one. This is good, but it's slow. Recovery. This is unsafe on block. Right? This goes into that, but only on hit. It doesn't hit crouching opponents. Right? You see how it's kind of easy. It's way easier to choose what move to do because we have this game plan. Right? Our objective with poking is to get into our game plan. Right? And our whole game plan is attempting to make this sequence happen. Right? So we can pick from our pokes, right? I could do this. It doesn't really go that far. You know, the hitbox is not super great, right? So I probably want to do this one, but wait, I have these special moves too. I could poke with this. That's really dangerous. I could die for doing that. Maybe not the best idea, right? I could poke with this. This is not bad. I can even follow behind it if I'm far enough away. So maybe I want to poke with this when I'm far away. And maybe I want to poke with this when I'm close. Right? Let's keep it simple. Let's not do any crazy buffering tricks or you know, special cancels or anything like that. No confirms into anything. Let's just keep it simple. We're just going to poke with this when we're far. And we're going to poke with this when we're far away. And remember, poking is going first, right? Why do we poke? We poke to get into a situation where we can further our game plan. We want to get to our end sequence, right? So we want to go through our sequences, you know, those building blocks of our game plan. We want to get through those. So we poke to further get us through those. And remember, our simple game plan is to just get this sequence over and over again, right? Because we can do this, and then go up, and then do it again, right? So we can throw our fireball, and we can walk behind this until we get close enough to start going for our jab, right? So that is poking, right? Poking is first. You poke, you take the initiative. The reason you poke is to further your game plan, right? You want to get to that final sequence in your game plan, that keystone sequence that your whole game plan is based around, right? You want to get to that, right? So you want to find pokes that enable you to do that, right? Now let's talk about counter poking, okay? So counter poking is a little bit more complex, but let's say that Chun-Li is doing this, right? She's doing down medium or command medium punch, right? Okay, now, well, I want to poke with this, but this is hard to get past, right? Say I go like this and she stuffs me, right? If she if she stuffs me when I go for this, right? Oh my god. If she stuffs me, or I'm having trouble getting around this, right? Or let's say she's just backing away and keeping good spacing. I can't ever touch her with this, right? We can go to counter poking, right? The counter poke is, okay, I know my opponent's going to do a move. I know the move they're going to do, or I have an idea of the move they're going to do. You don't need to know. You just need to have an idea, right? I have an idea of what they're going to do, and I need to get around this move so that I can further my game plan. I want to get to that end sequence, right? I can counter poke. So this, you need to go into the training mode versus the character. This is where matchup knowledge is important, and you need to look for moves that can counter these moves, right? So I could do this in neutral, right? I can just go down hard punch, right? And this can counter poke her, right? This is a Ken versus Chun-Li specific thing. This move can counter poke a lot of Chun-Li's moves, right? Because her moves are up and diagonal. This move will hit up and diagonal moves, right? You need to know a little bit about hitboxes and frame data. But we're not there yet. Don't worry about those things. Just go into training mode and just trial and error. Just practice some stuff, right? And the counter poke is designed to counter their move. So you know they're going to do it, and you still want to take the initiative. You're going first still. You are trying to dominate the match, right? You're taking the initiative, right? Just like a poke, you're going first. But the counter poke is now informed by your opponent's actions. So you go, okay, I see them using this button. How can I counter poke this button? I want to get towards my game plan. Well, it just so happens that Ken's down medium punch is a decent counter poke to this button. So you're still going first or at the same time, but you've tailored your poke. You've chosen your option. So you may just regular poke with a different button, right? Okay, my normal poke is going to be like this or this or something, right? Your counter poke is matchup specific to what they're pressing, right? So I say, oh, okay, I'm going to counter poke this with this, right? So you're going at the same time or still first, right? That's pretty much what a counter poke is, right? It's specifically designed to poke around whatever move they're using, right? So Ken's down medium punch works here. Ken's crouch hard punch works here. Those are our counter pokes. It's pretty much similar to a regular poke, right? Except that the intention is slightly different. You're still leading into your game plan, but you're going to counter the move that the opponent is using, right? So you have to go into the lab and say, okay, what is a good counter poke for this? If we both press this button at the same time, which move is gonna win, right? And that has to do with the shape of the hitboxes and the hurt boxes and the frame data of the move and things like that, right? If you play Ken, you'll find that many of his moves are good for counter poking, but not necessarily good for poking, right? And if you play Chun-Li, you'll find that many of her moves are good for poking, but not so good for counter poking, right? So this is character specific, matchup specific, but that's the concept right there, is that poking is first, you take the initiative, you have no prior information, you have no read or anything like that. Counter poking is when you have a little bit of an idea of what they're going to do, maybe you have a read, and you still want to take the initiative, you throw it out first, right? Now with punishing is when you wait for the opponent's move to completely whiff, right? And then you punish the extended or hurt box or the recovery of the move, right? So you wait for a move to completely whiff, and then you go for a punish. This is also somewhat matchup specific, but what you need to do is know the spacing of a move, and then go through your character's moveset and experiment with what's fast enough to whiff punish, right? And you might be saying, wow, that looks really hard, almost impossible to do. Am I supposed to react to their move whiffing? Not at all. Whiff punishing is mostly a preemptive action, right? However, you set it up beforehand, right? So you know how we were poking and we were counter poking, and that was just kind of like a timing thing, and we just got into position for our poke, and we're just gonna do it, right? We're taking the initiative, right? With punishing lets them take the initiative, but you set them up beforehand, right? So firstly, you have to have an idea of what button they're going to press and when they're going to press it, right? And this comes from just paying attention to the opponent and observing their actions. Secondly, you need to get into the proper spacing. So this is also something you're going to have to learn by looking at all the different characters and their moves and stuff like that, right? So you get into a space where their attack is going to whiff, right? And now, if I go here, I can go, okay, I think Chun-Li is going to go for command medium punch. I'm going to get ready to whiff punish it. So it's about 70% preemptive setup. I've set up for this, right? I'm ready. I'm ready to react. I'm primed to react, right? I'm focusing on this thing, right? And I've set it up. So my anticipation empowers my reactions. Whiff punishing is not purely reactionary. You plan ahead for it. You set up for it, right? This is preemptive. So I get into this spacing. I go, okay, I think Chun-Li's going to go for command medium punch here. I'm going to whiff punish. I've decided ahead of time, right? Now, looking at the matchup and knowing the characters is extremely important, right? So I wait for this to whiff, and then I do my whiff punish move, which for Ken should be stand medium punch or stand medium kick. I could do. Oops. I could also do the down fierce, right? But this is a player thing, right? Like, you play against the guy, you get an idea of when he likes to press his buttons, where he likes to press his buttons, so you're paying attention to the spacing and the timing, and then you're making an anticipation, right? You don't like throw everything else away, because you're juggling a lot of things during the match. You don't throw everything else you're thinking about away, but you just get ready, right? So you say, okay, I anticipate him to do this here, right? I've gone up, I've seen this pattern before, or I just feel it in my gut based on his previous reactions, right? So we're going to go for the whiff punish, which means we're going to get into a situation, let him take the initiative, and then we're going to punish him for whiffing this move, which is a mistake. So basically, you set your opponent up to make a mistake, and you're ready to react to the mistake. That's what a whiff punish is. Hey, what's up, Super Pats? I see you, man. Could I whiff punish this? Can I whiff punish this? It's there we go. We can use stand short or stand medium kick. Whiff punishing is character and matchup specific, right? You're going to want to know what moves whiff punish what moves. There are some general things you can do, and it is difficult. So don't feel bad if you can't get it all the time, but it's mostly based on anticipation, right? So a poke is you going first, right? A counter poke is you're taking the initiative, so you're going first or either at the same time they're going, right? And the counter poke is designed to get around whatever they're doing, right? So you're intentionally countering their move, right? And the whiff punish lets them go first, and then you punish them for whiffing, right? All three of these, you want to do all three of these to further your pre-selected game plan or whatever you're planning to do. The intention of all of these is to get back into your game plan, right? So we know that our game plan is to get into that jab target combo situation, right? We want that sequence. So what do we choose to whiff punish with here? Actually, let's think about it. Well, we want to get close, right? We want to get close so we can do our jab. Well, we can keep it simple, actually. We can whiff punish with sweep, right? If she whiffs, if we do it perfectly timed, we could probably sweep her, right? That would work. Right there, right? Or maybe we can go for a special move that keeps us close, like medium hurricane kick, right? So we could do one of these. This is better as a counter poke, right? That was a counter poke because I took the initiative and countered her move. This move is a direct counter to that move. We could try whiff punishing with this. That's a little slow and doesn't go too far. But you see the concept here, right? We're trying to find moves that go back into our original game plan. So we would sit in the lab and just try stuff. Oh, that looks pretty decent. We could punish the extended limb with that, right? So maybe this is our whiff punish here, right? This is the experimentation phase. This is what you're gonna go through to learn how to play neutral versus specific character, right? But those are the concepts of poking, counter poking, and whiff punishing, right? To identify a strong button, you're gonna go through a lot of trial and error, right? You're gonna just load up Chun-Li and make her do command medium punch, or load up Rashid and make him do fierce punch, or load up whatever character and make them do whatever move. And you're going to take your character and you're just going to try over and over different moves, different timings of moves. How can I whiff punish this move, right? And you're going to try different buffers, you're going to try different spacings, all that. To expedite this process, right? You can do this through trial and error. You can do it the old way, where you just load up and you try every single move, right? You try every single move 10, 15 times in a row to see what is the best. So you think through, like, okay, if I do this move, I can whiff punish it, but I can't get back into my situation I want, so let me try another move to whiff punish it, see if I can get back in, lead toward my game plan, right? You're just going to go through all your options. To expedite this, to make this whole, crazy thing faster, you can start by looking at frame data and hitboxes, right? So you can go on the internet, or you can go to the Capcom website, or you can go onto the Android App Store, or you can go onto the Apple App Store or whatever, and you can just find frame data, right? One of the best tools to find frame data is called Frame Assistant Tool, but Capcom also has their own official frame data stuff, right? So you're going to look at the frame data moves, and depending on the frame data, you can, at a glance, see if a move makes a good poke, a good counter poke, or a good, whiff punish, right? But that's not the whole story. You're going to also need to look at the hitboxes, right? So you can go to like SFV Sim, or you can get frame trapped hitbox viewer, or anything like that, right? Hey, what's up, Kyra? I see you. You can get these extra tools, right? And what these will do is help you figure this out faster. So for just to glance over this, because this is a deep topic, what makes a good poke is a move that has many active frames and a good hitbox, right? The more you want, many active frames, little recovery, and a good hitbox. If you have fast startup, that can also make a good poke, but it doesn't necessarily always make a good poke, because this jab has fast startup, but it doesn't go very far, right? This is much better poke than this, right? You want to look at the hitboxes. If you have a good hitbox, right, that doesn't linger in the recovery frames, that can also be a good poke, because whiff punishing will beat poking, right? Whiff punishing will beat poking. So if they wait for me to whiff this, right, they can whiff punish me. I'm vulnerable to a whiff punish now because I'm poking first. Remember how whiff punishing is spacing yourself, getting ready for them to do the move, and then punishing them for whiffing it, right? Well, if they space themselves, get ready for me to whiff this, and I whiff it, I can't block while this recovers, right? So if I want to ensure that I'm using good pokes, I'm using my most powerful pokes, I want to look at my recovery frames as well as like my hitbox. Because if I have a good hitbox, it's hard to counter poke, right? But if I have a lot of recovery frames, like for example, this has a good hitbox, right? This has a good hitbox. So it's hard for them. This is good as a counter poke. It's hard for them to counter poke me. So this beats poking, and it's really hard for them to counter poke, but it has a lot of recovery. So this is easy to whiff punish, right? So my good pokes are going to have fast recovery, and my good counter pokes are going to have good hitboxes and things like that, right? These are not like mutually exclusive things, but that's what you want to look at, right? So when you look at frame data, you see, oh, this move is fast, it has a lot of active frames, and it has a quick recovery. This must be a good poke, counter poke, or whiff punish tool, right? Basically, you want good moves. You want Karen normals in Street Fighter V. That is just what you need to look at. If when you look at the hitboxes, you're gonna look for disjointed hitboxes or hitboxes that don't linger, right? Excuse me. You ever lose track of what you were talking about? Right. So that's how you're gonna figure out that much faster. But the basic way is to just, through trial and error, try moves versus moves to find counter pokes, right? You also want to try moves for poking, right? You want to just test, like, you think it through, right? Do a move and go, okay, does this make me go into what my game plan was? Does this help me get towards my game plan, right? So if our game plan is to do this and go into this sequence again, right? That's our simple game plan. What do we want to poke with? Does this help us get to our game plan? Not necessarily, right? It doesn't really, I mean, it moves us forward, but it doesn't really get us close, right? Does this help us get towards our game plan? Not really, right? Maybe we could counter poke with this or whiff punish with this and then buffer it, right? That would get us close. You know, so just go through your options and think, like, how does this get me towards my final sequence, right? That's what you want to try to figure out. So in this matchup, I would, you know a little bit about Chun-Li, test Chun-Li's moves, you know, look at what Chun-Li players do and stuff like that, and I'd be able to determine, like, okay, this is a good poke in this matchup because it lets me do this. This is a good counter poke in this matchup because it counters these moves that are common, right? And to whiff punish her moves, I'm gonna need to know some specifics about Chun-Li, because some moves, like, for example, if she whiffs a move that leaves her crouching, right? Like, for example, her slide, and I do this won't hit crouching opponents at a certain distance. So if she whiffs this is not always the best whiff punish for that, right? But if I do this will hit crouching opponents, so maybe I'll use that versus her slide, right? There's some trial and error here. But you need to, the main thing is you want to think this through. You want to go, how does this lead into my game plan, right? That's what you want to try to do. All right. So identifying strong buttons for poke, counter poke. All right. So to surmise that, because this is definitely a little bit out of order, a good poke is going to lead you into your game plan. It's going to have a good hitbox, right? And it's going to have good frame data. That's what you want. You want a good hitbox, you want good frame data. You want a good startup, and you want many active frames. That's what makes a good poke, right? So I'm going first. I'm taking the initiative. This move has an okay startup, an okay amount of active frames. It can help me get into the sequence I want, right? So, okay, maybe this is a good poke here, right? That is going to be augmented by the matchup. So if, let's just say, hypothetically, Chun-Li had a move that shut this down. She had a counter poke, right? She had a move that countered this so hard that it's not even ever worth doing. Because if I ever did this, Chun-Li would just throw out her good counter poke move and blow me up, right? That would make this not a good poke in this matchup, right? So this might be a good poke in general, or a good poke as an idea in some matchups, but you got to worry about what the opponent's character is too. So what your good pokes are is, you know, they get you into your game plan, they have decent frame data, and you're looking for fast startup, many active frames. So this could be a good poke. This could be a good poke, right? But it has a lot of recovery, so it's vulnerable to whiff punishing, which means that I never want to miss this. I want them to block it or get hit, right? Because if I miss this, they can whiff punish me, right? So this is a good poke, but I need to make sure I touch them, right? This is a good poke if I don't touch them, right? But both of these, depending on the matchup, could be bad or good, right? So we're going to want to go into the lab and look at Chun-Li's moves, what we commonly see Chun-Li players do, and go, okay, how can I get into my game plan by doing this stuff? A good counter poke is just matchup specific in general, right? Generally, because you have an idea of when they're going to hit their button or what the timing is, the startup of your counter poke doesn't necessarily always matter, right? Like, this move has 6-frame startup. It is fast, but you could also counter poke with this move, right? Because if you know the timing, you know, like, okay, I think he's going to press it here. I'm very confident. You can start your counter poke whenever you want because you know when they're gonna try to poke you, right? So you're still taking the initiative when you counter poke. All right, let's talk about whiff punishing and the wiggle, right? So you see a lot of people do this, right? Why would someone do this? What is this for, right? A lot of players will do this just because they see high-level players do it. What this is, a high-level player does this to encourage whiff punishing, right? So you remember how to whiff punish a move, we had to get it to whiff and then be ready, right? We had to be ready. We had to anticipate whiff punishing it. What we can do is walk forward and encourage our opponent to hit a move and then walk back and let the move whiff. So if we have Chun-Li, she's going to do this. Let's say we walk into range for it, right? We can get hit. But if we suddenly walk out, we can walk in and walk out and make this move whiff. We can bait them to hit this move, and then we can try to whiff punish it, right? You could also use the wiggle to counter poke, right? You can use this to encourage your opponent to use a move, and if you have a good idea of their timing, you can wait for a whiff punish, or you can attempt to counter poke. That is what this is for. Walking back and forth isn't just to fill idle time. Walking back and forth, like every action we've taken in neutral so far, our pokes, our counter pokes, and our whiff punishes, this is intended to further our game plan, right? So we know that they're going to do this. We're setting up for a whiff punish or a counter poke here, right? We walk into the range of their move, and then we slip out. We bait them. We encourage them to press this move, and then we slip out, watch them whiff, or just straight up know the timing and counter poke them. That's what this is for. If you're wiggling over here, you're just wasting time and making your wrist tired, right? The wiggle, or when you see people do this, right, this little wiggle, this is a very precise and intentional control of the character. This is not what you... In Street Fighter, right, you don't just do this. Like, you'll see both players just doing this sometimes. You'll see them do it from, like, over here. Both of them will be full screen. That is very absent-minded and just super suboptimal, because if the opponent decides to walk forward when you walk back, you just lost ground, right? And everybody knows you don't want to be in the corner. So when you see people wiggle, right, you enter the range to encourage them to press a button, then you slip away. That is designed to set up and encourage them to hit a button so you can counter poke them or whiff punish them. That is what that is for. If you are wiggling and you're not walking into your opponent's range intentionally to try to get them to whiff something, you're doing it wrong. You're just doing it wrong, right? Excuse me. So this, like all other actions we're taking, is to further our game plan, right? So let's say we know Chun-Li is going to do her medium punch, right? We have an idea, right? We've been playing against this guy a couple games. We think he's going to do this whenever we walk into range. So we're just going to walk into range, right? Oh, I'm baiting you. And we can counter poke him. Or we could walk out and try to whiff punish him, right? That's why you wiggle. You don't just wiggle to wiggle. You don't just do this, right? This is an intentional action. And it happens a lot at high level. You'll see two high level players just doing this, right? And the reason they're doing that is because one guy's walking into another guy's dangerous range or lethal range where he can touch him. and then he walks out and sees if he presses a button, and the other guy is doing that at the same time, right? And while that's also happening, they're trying to maintain spacing. So you'll see people dance around. They'll dance this way and then move that way and then wiggle back and forth and go this way. And all the time, they're paying very close attention to the distance between them and their opponent and the moves that they're looking for, right? So one play, I could walk into Chun-Li's command medium punch range, but Chun-Li could be looking for my stand fierce range, right? So Chun-Li could walk a little, we could walk towards each other, and then I go, oh, okay, this is a dangerous spot, I want to walk out. I could walk out, right? And then Chun-Li could walk out, and then we could just be doing this wiggle game because we're looking for each other's dangerous range. We're trying to set up, getting them to whiff or getting an idea of when they're going to press a button and go for the counter poke or the whiff punish. That's why people do that in neutral, right? You're measuring the space. That leads more towards footsies, right? We're starting to play footsies, right? But before we can put this all together, we know these things. We know, all right, you can poke, you can counter poke. Hey, what's up, David? I see you, man. When you press a button, let's say stand medium punch, you buffer. You buffer? Yeah, you can buffer in neutral, right? I see your question. You could buffer, right? When you use a button in neutral, right? Whether it's a poke, whether it's a counter poke, or whether it's a whiff punish, you do it with intention to further your game plan, right? So earlier, we established that a simple game plan would just be go for this over and over again, right? We know that this sequence leads into itself. And to get to that sequence, we can walk up, right? And we can walk up behind some pokes, right? We can walk up behind some pokes and try to get to touch them with jab. If they block, we can go for throw, and that lets us start over again, right? So we have this walking sequence, then we have this jabbing sequence, then we can confirm into this Oki sequence, or we can confirm into this throw sequence, right? We have all these ideas, right? And we know that, okay, they're not just going to let us walk up, so maybe we need to throw some buttons behind it, right? Well, now, with what David is saying, what he's suggested, buffering, right? We know that this button is not only a decent poke, right? We know that this button buffers into a knockdown move. So we could poke out and then buffer our hurricane kick. Or we could buffer our uppercut, right? And a buffer is when you press a special cancelable move and input the special cancel whether the move hits or not, right? So this move is buffered, right? I'm buffering this into heavy hurricane kick. Oops. So if Chun-Li were to get hit by this move, the heavy hurricane kick will come out. But if she doesn't get hit, nothing will happen, right? This is just a buffer. We're just inputting the move. We're buffering the move, right? So this can also determine what is going to make a good button for us to press in neutral, depending on how we want to use it, right? So let's say that Chun-Li is using down medium kick, right? Let's say she's using down medium kick. Here we go. Okay, so we're in neutral. We want to get to our objective. We want to get to our end sequence, right? We know that we can walk up, walk back. We could try to bait her for this medium kick. But ideally, we want to get mad close. We want to get as close as we can get and go for our game plan, right? Our pre-established plan. We're trying to get to that end goal sequence, right? So let's think. All right, we could poke, right? We could try to poke her first, right? So we can throw fireballs, walk up behind them. We can throw this out, right? And poke her first, right? we could counter poke, right? We can try counter poking by waiting for the timing, right? We get an idea of the timing she's going to use, right? By observing her. We'll get to how to do that later in a moment. But we can go for a counter poke, right? We could also go for a counter poke, right? Or we could wait for this to whiff and then try to go for a whiff punish. But this is going to be pretty difficult, right? This is going to be pretty difficult. We could whiff punish with sweep there. We can do all the three things in neutral, right? We can counter poke by knowing the timing. We can poke just by going first, or we can try to whiff punish, right? Now, how do we choose the best option out of all of these, right? Well, now we know we are armed with the ability to buffer, right? We know about buffering, right? So, not only are we going to pick a move that we think is good versus medium kick, we're going to pick a move that has good startup, good frame, good active frames, an okay recovery, right? We can also pick a move that's special cancelable, so we can buffer, right? So now, instead of having to be really close, right? Instead of having to be like right here and walk up to get our jab, right? We can buffer this. We can buffer this. So we can counter poke and buffer, right? So now we can find a move that we can buffer that might work. Let's just try stuff, right? We're just trying things to throw out. This will get us towards our end goal faster, right? This is a more efficient way to get towards our end goal if we just buffer something here, right? That's an extra layer that you can add to make your neutral stronger, right? Is not only have you chosen the right option, poke, counter poke, or whiff punish, not only have you chosen the best move for that option, you've also chosen the best thing to do for that option. So for example, Chun-Li's medium kick, we can do that, but that doesn't really get us near our goal, right? We can counter poke it with this, or we can just poke with this, and we know that if she does medium kick, this will go over top. She can't reach us here, right? But we could get into range for this and go for a bait into a whiff punish, or a counter poke into a buffer. Oh, now we get close. You see, right? This adds to our game plan, right? That's pretty much how you would use buffering in neutral, right? You got to think like, okay, I know that this move is good versus down medium kick, right? Because she can't touch me, but I can touch her. If she does medium kick and I mess the timing up, right, I can still get her, right? She can't get me because this will go over lows, right? But is it better to counter poke instead of poke first? Like intentionally just counter poke so we get a buffer? If my intention is to poke, I wouldn't do it from right here. I can't poke her from right here because I'll just whiff, right? I want to touch her at least. So from here, I'd be either counter poking or whiff punishing. And the fact that I can buffer this will help me determine what is my best option in this situation, right? So that's how you would apply buffering in neutral, right? And when you do that, you don't just buffer randomly like, oh, I can buffer this move into fireball, right? No, you want to think, how does this get me back into my desired situation, right? How does this get me into the sequence I want, right? How does this feed into my game plan, right? You want all the actions you take to feed back into your game plan. That's what you're doing in neutral. So even though your character has all of these tools, right? Let's just say theoretically, let's just pretend that, well, we don't even need to pretend. This move is good versus crouching medium kick versus Chun-Li, right? But does this help me get to my game plan? Does this help me get to this sequence, right? It doesn't help me get to that sequence as much as down medium punch buffered does, right? So this, I choose this over this. And with this move, I can only really poke with it when I'm close. So when Chun-Li starts using down medium kick, or I anticipate her to use down medium kick, I think I'd walk up and go for a counter poke or a whiff punish in this situation. So now my matchup, my matchup versus Chun-Li has changed. Instead of me focusing on preemptively poking her and attempting to walk up, right? Now I'm looking for the spacing and the counter poke or the whiff punish, right? You see how assessing my character's tools and trying to get into the game plan that I pre-established has augmented the way I play neutral. You see how it basically puts itself together for me, right? If you know, once you have a game plan, everything else will fall into place. You just need to have some sequences to build up towards your game plan. All right. So let's say we want to do that. We want to counter poke Chun-Li's down medium kick, right? Well, how can we get her to medium kick? Right? We want to try to control the opponent, right? We do the wiggle, right? So we walk up to the range of the medium kick, then we walk away and we let the medium punch fly, right? Or we walk up and hit the medium punch at the right timing we know will counter poke her, right? And we get an idea of this by playing against a player. We'll discuss that more in a moment. And then we can go for our buffer, right? Which will leave us close, which will let us do this sequence, which leads into the end goal of our game plan, right? Now, that game plan might be simple, it might not be super optimal, but I hope you can begin to see how it feeds into us playing neutral game, right? Now, we know about poking, we know about counter poking, we know about whiff punishing, we know about looking for strong buttons in the matchup. We know some general stuff. We kind of skipped over how to find strong buttons. But we have an idea that we want strong buttons. We're looking for strong buttons. And we know about the wiggle, right? We know about spacing ourselves with the wiggle, right? The intention of this is to walk into a threatening range for the opponent. So say we walk into her down medium kick, and then we wiggle back, we walk back, and now this sets us up to either counter poke that move or whiff punish that move, right? We can also do the same thing by threatening our pokes, right? So we can go for all these different options by manipulating the space between us, right? Not only that, right, we got to remember that our opponent is a human being, right? We got to remember that they're another person, so they're going to be trying to do the same thing. So it might happen that we'll walk into a range for them, and they'll walk up into a range for us, or we'll walk into a range for us to poke, right? Say our plan is to poke first, and they might walk out, right? So we're going to be doing this dance with intention. We are intentionally moving. We're not moving just to move. We're not just walking back and forth like this at full screen. We are entering and exiting ranges to try to encourage our opponent to press attacks. And when they press an attack, they will get opened up, right? At a more, or they're vulnerable to being opened up because you can't block where you press an attack. At a more advanced level, at a higher level, you will move not only to encourage them to do attacks, but to also encourage them to move and use the vulnerabilities in their movement, right? Like, for example, if you're walking back and forth, if I'm doing this, Chun-Li could perform crouching medium kick right here and clip me for walking low. So at an advanced level, Chun-Li might say, wow, I'm really yelling. Chun-Li might say, wow, every time I walk up for a crouch medium kick range, or that Ken player gets into my crouch medium kick range, he'll walk backwards. Okay, let me walk up a little bit further. Or when he walks up, I'll walk up too. Then he might walk back. There's a good chance he'll walk back. Let me then abuse that by going low, right? That's the wiggle, the dance. It is done with intention always. There is never a reason to move without intention, right? To get this to work, however, you need to know about rhythm. To put all of this together, you need a general understanding of rhythm and how to read and condition the opponent, right? And those might sound really tough to deal with because they are. This is where the skill of the game comes in. But they're simple concepts. So first, let's talk about reading and conditioning the opponent. Every action you take, even standing still, even doing nothing, is going to adjust. It's going to change the state of the game, right? And that is a stimulus towards your opponent, right? So if you do nothing, your opponent sees that and goes, oh, he's doing nothing. Then they're going to have a reaction to that. They're going to respond. Even if they stay still, that's still a response, right? And this happens to you at the same time as it happens to the other guy. Every action you take is a stimulus towards the opponent, which is going to trigger a certain response. What you want to do is observe that that stimulus and that response, right? You want to observe the cause and the effect. So let's say if I stand still, Chun-Li throws Kikoken, right? So later I might observe this a couple times. I might just pay attention, right? I'm paying attention to everything, by the way. And I say, okay, I'm going to stand still. Oh, he threw Kikoken. All right, we're playing the match. Blah, blah, blah happens. I stand still again. Oh, he threw Kikoken. Huh. If I apply the stimulus of standing still and his response is Kikoken, what if I stand still again but then counter the response because I know it's coming, right? Now I've made a read. I've read the opponent, right? I'm reading the opponent the entire time. This is how you read someone. So you say, oh, all right, we're moving. I'm standing still at this distance, at this spacing, at these details, right? This amount of health, this amount of V gauge, this amount of EX bar. Observe the game state and go, okay, this stimulus causes this response. Oh, he threw Kikoken as I expected. I'm going to jump over the Kikoken and punish it. Or, oh, he threw Kikoken as I expected. Okay, I'm going to block it now. Or, oh, he threw Kikoken as I expected. I'll neutral jump, right? I'm ready for that action. This happens as you play neutral, as you use your pokes, as you use your counter pokes, and as you use your whiff punishes. This happens, right? So you can say, okay, every time I walk up to poke with down medium punch, my opponent moves this way. They respond this way, right? Let me anticipate that the next time. So my example of like how Chun-Li saw that I backed up every time she got into range because I'm trying to whiff punish or counter poke her down medium kick, that's a read, right? Based on simple stimulus and response, right? This is the game state. This is my opponent's response, right? You can further use that to condition opponents. You can set them up, right? So they're going to have this natural response, right? Like, say every time I walk up for down medium punch, Chun-Li walks backwards. Just as an example, just hypothetical, right? Say she walks backwards, right? I walk up into range for this, she walks out of the range, right? I could intentionally walk into that range several times and let Chun-Li walk away and save it for later. I could save it for round 3. I could save it for game 10 of our first of 10. I could save it for 2 seconds in the future, whatever. But I've cataloged that information. Okay, when I apply this stimulus, there's this response. I'm going to save that, right? And I'm going to do it again and again and again to encourage that response, right? I'm just going to let Chun-Li get away with this. I'm going to let him get away with walking back, right? But all the time, we know we're ready. So we walk up for down medium punch, and we go, oh, yes, he walked back. Okay, let me do it again. Oh, yes, he walked back. Okay, let's focus on something else for now, right? Then we play the game. We go through all that stuff, and then we go back to it. Oh, he's still walking back. Let's save that for later. We've encouraged that natural response we have found him to do by applying the stimulus over and over again, right? I kind of rushed through that, but this is a short explanation. That is the basics of conditioning the opponent, right? So now we can abuse that response in the future. Like, it could be the final game, final round or whatever, and we go, all right, we're going to go for that thing we set up earlier. We walk up in the down medium punch range, then we just sweep him because we expect him to walk backwards, right? And then he gets swept, and I don't know, he loses or something, right? That stimulus, response, anticipation, reaction from you is the basics of reading and conditioning the opponent. You can also condition the opponent with hitting them. You can condition the opponent with you taking actions. You can condition the opponent with literally any way you affect the game state. You are able to put conditioning on the opponent, right? You're able to stimulate them and have them have a response, right? The response might not be what you want or what you expect, but they will have a response. So, say for example, Chun-Li combos me, and I do back get up, right? Like, I do the back roll, right? He combos me again, I do the back roll. He combos me again, I do the back roll, right? I could be setting him up for one time for me to do the quick rise, and then I press jab, and he messes his setup up because he's anticipating my back roll, right? You see the stimulus and response relationship and how you can get people to anticipate things and how you can abuse anticipations. That's the basics of reading conditioning, and that keys into rhythm, right? That flows directly into rhythm. So now, say we're playing neutral, right? Bring us all back to neutral. Every time I go for this at the same spacing and timing, right? Your rhythm is your timing, essentially. It's just your timing, right? So, say I go for this, I go, all right, down medium punch, down medium punch, down medium punch, down medium punch. This is a very obvious pattern, right? It might be a little more or a little less obvious than some actual patterns that are going to happen in matches, but these patterns do occur. Every single player, whether they're doing it intentionally or not, has a rhythm to their actions, right? It's the timing at which they take these actions and the context, right? So we know at this spacing, we can expect Ken to do down medium punch at this time, right? So it could be down medium punch, dump, 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 down medium punch, dump, 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 down medium punch, right? This is paramount to playing neutral. This is what makes Guile player Sonic Boom so hard to get over, or enables people to whiff punish with incredible accuracy, and gives people the insane neutral, the big brain stuff, right? Is observing these rhythms, right? Every single person is going to have a pattern. So we can watch these rhythms in our opponent. Like, oh, every time he's in range for a roundhouse, it comes out at this timing. Okay, let's anticipate that. Or every time I'm walking up, I roundhouse at this timing, right? So I go walk up, boom, roundhouse. Walk up, boom, roundhouse, right? So my stimulus to my opponent is walk up, then I roundhouse, right? Roundhouse. I'm giving them a rhythm. You see the rhythm here in the action? This is super intentional because the next time I walk up, I could go walk up, nothing, right? Now, not only have I applied, I'm aware of what my stimulus is to the opponent. I've applied it in such a way that is going to encourage, that human tendency to pick up on patterns, and they're going to be anticipating my response in this situation, which is walk up, roundhouse, right? But I'm thinking ahead. I'm not going to roundhouse because I think that they think I'm going to roundhouse. So they do something to counter roundhouse, but then I'll be ready for it, right? Or another example of how you can apply rhythm simply and easily is through throwing fireballs, right? So say I do fireball, fireball, wait, fireball, fireball, wait, fireball, nothing, right? Now these are kind of oversimplified examples, but when I do that fireball, fireball, wait, fireball, fireball, wait, fireball, nothing, I guarantee you most people would jump at the nothing, right? You give them that stimulus, and you yourself proactively set up the response by manipulating the timing of your actions, right? That is rhythm. You can apply that to your neutral game, right? So not only can we use fireballs, we can use our pokes, or we can use our counter pokes, or we could even go for our whiff punishes by manipulating spacing, right? Like, okay, every time this guy walks up, he walks up for this amount of time and then scoots back when he tries to get into my medium kick distance. Or every time I'm going to walk up to the opponent, I'm going to walk up for a mad long time. I'm going to just walk. Just, I'm Zangief. I'm just going to walk at you, right? You could use that and then say, okay, the next time I walk up, I'm going to walk and then block and see what they're going to do, right? You use that rhythm to cleverly manipulate the neutral. Now, this is crazy. It sounds complex, sounds like it doesn't go together, but here it is, right? Here's the final example of us playing footsies, right? Say Chun-Li is going for down medium kick, right? I walk up into range for Chun-Li's down medium kick. I wait in this range, right? This is the first time I walk up. I wait in this range, and I pay close attention to what I'm looking for, right? So I'm intending to get Chun-Li to do down medium kick. I pay attention to how long it takes him to hit medium kick, or if he hits medium kick altogether, or not at all, I mean. So let's say he hits medium kick after a small pause, right? I walk back, maybe I get hit, maybe I block it, right? These are important things to pay attention to as well, but just for this example, let's say we get into another situation. I get into a range for his medium kick. I observe the distance, right? Okay, I'm in range for medium kick. I observe the timing. Okay, he hit medium kick right away this time. And then, right, I observe his response after that situation. Like, okay, medium kick. He hits medium kick when I get close, and then after that, this happens, right? So I know my stimulus is getting close. His response is down medium kick. I know now the timing of his response. This lets me choose whether I want to poke, counter poke, or whiff punish. And the poke, counter poke, or whiff punish, remember, is intended to go back into my game plan. Remember all the way from the beginning that we just want to do this over and over, right? Well, we're going to choose our buttons in neutral to get us in that situation. So we walk up into medium kick range. We know when it's coming. Let's say he does it right away again, right? Oh, okay, so he's done it right away like 3 times in a row. All right, so I'm going to apply the rhythm here. I'm going to walk up for the same timing. I know he's going to do it right away. So instead of pausing in this instant, I'm going to back up by walking back, right? Now we've changed we've applied a stimulus, but we mixed him up by changing our rhythm, right? Because we know what his response to this situation is pressing medium kick. Now his medium kick we know is coming out at this timing. We could whiff punish it into a buffer, which would get us close, or we could walk up and apply the stimulus of getting in range to his medium kick. We know it's going to come out right away, right? We know the timing. We've observed his rhythm, right? So instead of manipulating our rhythm, let's just simply abuse a read and immediately go for a counter poke, right? Or we could walk up short and see if he just responds to the timing of our walk up. Is he just responding to our rhythm, or is he responding to our distance? right? And this whole thing is happening while each player walks back and forth in and out of their opponent's threatening ranges, right? You're trying to get a sense of, okay, what button are they pressing? What space are they pressing it at? What timing are they pressing it at, right? What is the rhythm here? What can I do to counter these buttons? This is footsies. That is footsies. It's very, very, very complex. There are many components, right? And all of it hinges on the specific player, the specific character, the specific matchup. But it all comes down to simple steps, simple, singular ideas that combine together to make, the skillful part of this game. That is footsies. Yo, what's up, J Wings? I get a little rambly sometimes, but that's footsies. Let me see if I can explain that more succinctly. Let me see if I can explain that again. Let's run it back. Let's rematch. Okay. So, let me get my list of things we're going to talk about here. Let's run this back. Let's run back for a shorter, more succinct, more reasonable explanation, because that was very much off the cuff. Okay. Here's the run back. To play footsies in neutral, you're going to have to take a step back and get some fundamental things out of the way, right? So first, before you begin anything, right, you can realize that, wow, there's a lot of options, a lot of things both these characters can do, a lot of unique things to this specific matchup, and, if I walk back, they can hit me low. If I crouch low, they can do an overhead. If I block, they can throw me. Everything is unsafe. What do I do? There's a billion options, right? You want to intentionally limit those options by making yourself a game plan. You need to have a goal set up before you enter the match, even, right? It doesn't need to be set in stone. It can change as you play, but you need to have an idea of what you want to do, right? You need a basic game plan at least. It can be anything. It doesn't matter if it's super optimal or crazy or wacky or whatever. You need a game plan. You cannot play neutral, and you cannot play footsies without having a pre-established game plan. Okay, well, how do we make a game plan? A game plan in 2D fighters is going to be made up of several sequences you have practiced, right? So a sequence is just a set of actions that you've done before. The reason you want to have these practiced is so that you can save some mental space, some mental brain power on observing the opponent's reactions, right? Paying attention to your opponent is critical. If you cannot observe the opponent, you cannot play neutral and you cannot play footsies effectively, right? So our game plan is going to be made up of some sequences. Let's pick some simple sequences we can go for, right? Let's choose this, right? Let's just say our goal is to get into this sequence. That's our game plan. We want to get into this, and then we can dash up afterwards. Well, it's pretty fortuitous that this basically leads back into itself, right? This sets us up to go back into itself. So this is our goal right here. All right, so that's one sequence. How do we get to this sequence from round start? Okay, well, we're going to have to get close, right? How can we get close? Well, we can walk up, right? We could jump. We can do a special move. We could follow behind a fireball or a normal, right? Oh, okay. So we're going to need to poke. We're going to need to follow up behind some pokes because the opponent's just not going to let us walk up. I mean, they might, but it's pretty good chance that they won't, right? Especially if we have to walk this far to get in range for our jab. So we're going to need some pokes, right? We're going to need some counter pokes, and we're going to need some whiff punishes because we need to find a way to get close and deal with the opponent's moves. They're going to try to hit us, right? So we can start with looking for some pokes, right? Now, a poke is when you go first. You are poking. You're taking the initiative, and you are going first, right? So you're hitting a move and poking at the opponent, not only to prod their defenses and to observe their reaction to the poke, but also to further your game plan. The main goal of doing anything in neutral is to get you into your end goal sequence, right? So our game plan is to hit this and then go for this again, right? That's our final sequence. So let's come up with some sequences that lead into that. We could back up and follow behind our fireball. We could, you know, wait for the opponent to move forward, right? We can just chill out and then dash. We can follow behind some hitboxes, just like the fireball. We can go for these pokes, right? We're poking to lead into our game plan, right? So we want to choose a poke that is not only good versus Chun-Li, but leads us into a situation we want to get. So we could poke with this, right? But does this get us into this situation? Not necessarily, right? So maybe we want to poke with our fireball and move behind it, or we want to stagger our down medium punches or stagger our jabs, right? To poke to get our way in. Or maybe we want to poke with something that we can buffer into a special move to knock them down. So we might want to poke with this, which then gets us into this situation, right? So, okay, this will get me close into this situation as a poke. I can just throw this out, buffer it, and if it hits them, I'm now in situation to go for my end goal, right? It's just to repeat that sequence over again. So one of my sequences in neutral might just be to walk up, hit this at a likely range for it to hit, like, you know, maybe if they walk into it, or I can just walk into the range myself and I can poke, right? And then buffer, and I'm in that situation. That's how you're going to choose. That's how you choose a poke you want to do. We're also going to have to look at this and say, well, is this move good versus Chun-Li? Because Chun-Li can poke, counter poke, and whiff punish us, right? So let's say Chun-Li is doing stand medium punch, right? Is this a good poke versus command medium punch? This standing command medium punch? We'll have to see. We have to open up the lab and test it out, right? We have to test this out. We can also look at the frame data and the hitboxes to see how these moves interact, right? It might so happen that in this matchup, we may not have very many good pokes versus Chun-Li's specifically, because she could probably counter poke or whiff punish our moves when we attempt to use them as a poke. So let's go look at counter poking, right? Counter poking is similar to regular poking, right? The objective is to get into your game plan, that end goal sequence you want, right? We're taking sequences and we're building them up into a game plan, right? So let's say we're going to counter poke. We're still going to take the initiative, right? We're still going to go first or at the same time as the opponent. The goal is to get into our desired sequence, to get to the end goal of our game plan. But now we need to know some matchup specific stuff, and in this case it's about Chun-Li. So let's say she's doing this over and over, right? What is a good move that will beat this move, right? So we open up training mode and we look at all of our moves. What can we do that will just beat this? If I do my move first, or if we do these moves at the same time, what move is going to beat that move, right? So we test it. We could use stand fierce. We could use crouch fierce, maybe. What about roundhouse? Roundhouse, crush counters, right? But that's unsafe on block. Maybe we want to mitigate our risk a little bit. So let's choose a fast move that's, say, special cancelable. What about down medium punch? Down medium punch might work. Hey, look at that. We can counter poke her by knowing the timing and knowing that this move may be able to beat her stand medium, but we can't buffer it into that. What else could we choose, right? Then you're going to look through these options, right? You're going to look through these options with your character, and maybe after a bunch of trial and error, you'll come to find your best counter poke option versus that specific move from that specific character, right? And the goal of us counter poking is to get into our game plan. So we're gonna, even though we might be able to counter poke this, say with sweep, right? We have to think, does sweep let us get into our game plan of going for this, right? Maybe, maybe not. We might be able to counter poke with down medium kick or fireball or stand medium punch, but does it get us towards our game plan, right? That's going to depend on your character, your moves, their character, their moves. But you always want to choose a button in neutral that furthers your objective. Just because it counters the opponent's move doesn't necessarily mean it's going to further your objective. So to choose a good counter poke, we need to find something that not only beats that move if we did them at the same time, but will get us into our end goal, right? And that could be many different things, but just as an example, we just want to get into this sequence here, right? Our end goal could be stay away, or our end goal could be have a medium distance and throw fireballs, or any manner of things more complex or less complex, right? Now, another way to handle this medium punch in neutral would be to whiff punish, right? A whiff punish is punishing the recovery of this move. We let it whiff, right? How can we get this move to whiff? Well, firstly, we're going to have to encourage them to do this move or have them do this move and it whiff, right? So a lot of people are not really going to want to hit their moves unless it's going to hit. So one way we can encourage them to do that is by doing what's called the wiggle, right? We can adjust our spacing. And what that is we walk up into the space of that move, and then we walk back, right? And we anticipate them hitting their button at the distance we walked into. We intentionally walk into where we can get hit with this move, and then walk back, right? And when that move comes out and they whiff it, we look for one of our buttons, right? We've already got this trained out in training mode, right? So this sequence is pre-canned. We already know what we're going to do. We look for whiff punishing that move with one of our buttons that will whiff punish it, right? So for Ken, for example, I could use stand medium punch to whiff punish that. Or I could use crouch hard punch, right? That is a whiff punish. And again, we're going to look for moves that will get us into our chosen game plan, right? Our objective at the end here is whatever we choose, right? Our goal. It just so happens that this time we want to get into this sequence. So we say, okay, what move here will whiff punish this into something that gets me close, right? So maybe, even though crouch hard punch would work, maybe it's not crouch hard punch into hard tatsu. Maybe it's down medium punch into medium tatsu, or maybe it is sweep, right? This is going to depend on your character versus their move, whatever. But you want to find something that gets you into your game plan, right? You want to find a sequence that stacks up to your ultimate objective, your ultimate goal, right? That's how you decide what buttons you're going to press in neutral, right? What poke you're going to have, what counter poke you're going to have, and what whiff punishes you're going to try and have is going to be based on what your predetermined objective is. What is it you want to do, right? To make these decisions, you need to have an end goal in mind, right? So to decide what to do in neutral, you need to have this is the situation I want, right? And that's going to inform what buttons you're going to press, what moves you're going to do, where you're going to stand, etc. Right? Now, to set up whiff punishes right? We need to be out of the range of their move, and we need to get them to hit their move, right? So we can manipulate our space by wiggling in and out of their range, right? But this also requires that we have a manipulation of rhythm, right? And to understand rhythm, you need to have a basic understanding of reads and conditioning, right? Because our ultimate goal is to bait them to press a move and then have them whiff it, right? That's our ultimate end goal. So we need to manipulate our rhythm and condition the opponent or have a read on the opponent, right? So reads and conditioning is fairly simple. It can get immeasurably complex, but the fundamental principles are really simple. The game is always supplying a stimulus to both players, right? We can see that both characters are standing still, or we can see that both characters are moving, or we can see that there's this much health bar, the stun bar is this high, the EX bars are this full, the V-trigger bars are this full. There's information for us to observe. This is going to cause a response. So every action you take that alters the game state is going to cause a response in the opponent, even if that action is standing still, right? So let's say every time I walk into Chun-Li's command medium punch range, he does a medium punch, right? Let's just say, hypothetically, right? Every time I walk up to this distance, he does a medium punch. So the stimulus here is that I walk up, and then he did that medium punch, right? That is his response. That's his natural response. That's the first response I observe, right? So we're playing, blah, blah, blah. We're both doing this to each other. Let's say I walk into that medium distance again. I observe that response. Oh, he does medium punch, right? Now, I walk up into that distance again. I anticipate him doing medium punch. I've applied this stimulus, and I've observed his response. Now, because I have an anticipation of what his response is, I can walk back, right? If he whiffs, I'm ready. My reactions are primed by my anticipations, and then I can whiff punish that move with what I've practiced in training mode. So I've set this sequence up beforehand, right? I'm going to walk forward for this amount of time to this spacing, wait this amount of time. That wait could be 0 amount of time, or it could be, really long. And then I walk back and I look for the whiff punish that I've practiced before. And that might be, I don't know, medium punch buffered into medium hurricane kick, which will then get me close to go for my end goal, which is to repeat this sequence over and over again, right? So I'm setting up this whiff punish by observing what stimulus causes what response to my opponent, right? And this, you can do this for more than whiff punishing. You can also do this anytime you have control of your character. At any time you have control of the game state, you can apply a stimulus to your opponent and observe their response. So say, for example, Chun-Li knocks me down, right, with a combo. Say he does his bread and butter combo and he knocks me down. I could back rise. And then if he gets that again, I could back rise. And, Chun-Li is a human being playing the game just like I am. So he's going, oh, the stimulus here is that he gets knocked down by my bread and butter, and his response is to go for back rise. I'm reading this situation. So the next time I knock him down, I'll go for a setup that's really good for back rise, right? Because Chun-Li is going to have a game plan too. They're going to try to find something that feeds back into their game plan, and my job is to interrupt that and force my game plan onto them, right? So now this has occurred multiple times. The next time Chun-Li knocks Ken down or knocks me down, I could say, haha, I'm going to quick rise. And then he might go for a setup that only works on back rise, and now I've interrupted his game plan. I might be able to press a button or get away with something or just get out. Any manner of things could happen. But there's that stimulus and that response. There's that cause and that effect. So not only can you condition your opponents on your offense, you can condition them on your defense as well. And anytime you can condition your opponent, anytime you have control over the game state. So anytime you can control your character to do something, you can condition the opponent, even if that's standing still, right? And any way you affect the game state is a stimulus towards the opponent and yourself, mind you, and it's going to invoke a certain response. So if you pay attention to what these stimuli are and just correlate them with the responses, so like, oh, every time I walk forward, he does this, right? You can then abuse that with anticipation. You can observe that pattern, right? You can do some basic pattern recognition and go, all right, I'm going to apply this stimulus. I anticipate this response. Let's see what my opponent does. I anticipate them to do this. I'm going to counter it preemptively, right? That is basically just how you make a read and condition the opponent at the same time, right? Stimulus, response, cause, effect. You do something, they have to respond. There's no way that they cannot respond, right? Now, the skillful part is that they could intentionally do something like, oh, I know that you know that I've done this 3 times, so now I'm going to do this to mess you up because you think you know that I know this, but I see that you've been paying attention to me doing this, right? That's where the skill of the game comes in. But that's basically how you condition the opponent, right? Now, you can use your rhythm to intentionally give the opponent patterns and bait them into the responses you want, right? So say, for example, I walk up and Chun-Li always does medium punch, the command medium punch, right? I'm going to look for the timing, the rhythm of this situation. So let's say I walk up, pause, walk back. Walk up, pause, walk back, right? I'm going to intentionally apply this stimulus with this rhythm, right? This gives me a great amount of control over the situation because I know I have repeatable results. If I've paid attention to the stimulus I'm applying to the opponent, I can predictably or reliably predict their response. So say I walk up, pause, walk back. Walk up, pause, walk back, right? There's a rhythm here. Now I'm going to look at Chun-Li's rhythm. So I walk up, and in this example, he presses the command medium punch, right? I walk up, pause, walk back. I walk up, he does medium punch, right? I block it, I walk back, right? I walk up again, he does medium punch. I block it, I walk back, right? So I know that when I walk up into this range, he presses it immediately, right? Just as this example, say I see, okay, he does it right away. So now I go, okay, instead of walk up, pause, walk back, which I believe him to be intentionally anticipating because I'm letting him do that, right? There's this stimulus, this response that's working for him, right? I assume he'll do that again because I've observed this stimulus multiple times. I know what the response is likely to be. I walk up, adjust my rhythm. So instead of walk up, pause, walk back, I do walk up, walk back. Right? You see how I've manipulated the rhythm here? And now he's going to do medium punch immediately, just in this example. So he does it immediately. Now I'm ready to whiff punish. Right? I'm anticipating his immediate medium punch. So I'm walk up, he's medium punch. It's walk up, medium punch. Walk up, medium punch. Right? I'm anticipating this, which primes my reaction and enables me to whiff punish. Right? Rhythm is a huge part of neutral game, and without manipulation and understanding of timing, right, of rhythm of actions, it's really hard to play footsies. So by using your rhythm, observing your opponent's rhythm, you can better play neutral, right? Excuse me. So, to whiff punish effectively and reliably, right, we need to know what moves the opponent has, what they're likely to do, when they're likely to do it, and the timing of when they're going to do it. And then we need to know what moves we can use to whiff punish that move, right? So basically, we just have to have an idea of how they're going to do it, and then what we can do to whiff punish it, and then we establish a rhythm and bait them into that pattern. We're intentionally baiting them into that pattern and then we're going to manipulate our rhythm to get them to whiff, right? That's how you whiff punish. So we walk up, say Chun-Li does it immediately. We know that his rhythm is, okay, I walk up, he does medium punch, and then I pause, right? So I walk up, and instead of pause, I immediately walk back. He whiffs, he gets whiff punished, right? That's rhythm and conditioning in neutral, and that is critical to your success rate in whiff punishing the opponent. Because when you whiff punish an opponent, it is not a reaction, it is an anticipation that primes a reaction. You are very, very ready when someone whiffs a move, right? You don't just simply react unless it's something extremely slow. Like, for example, Ken whiffs heavy hurricane kick. This takes over a second to finish. Of course, you can react to this. Or let's say maybe you can react to that, right? But the majority of moves in Street Fighter are extremely fast. They're so hard to whiff punish, especially in Street Fighter V, right? So when you whiff punish someone, it's a reaction primed by anticipation. And to get them to do that, you need a little bit of conditioning and a good understanding of manipulation of rhythm of action. So we can apply the wiggle, right? So how can we apply this conditioning and rhythm to the rest of our neutral, right? How can we apply it to counter pokes and pokes, right? Because we know that a poke is going first, right? And we poke with intention of furthering our game plan. A counter poke intentionally counters their move, so we think they're going to do something to stop us from poke, because they're not just going to let us poke, right? They're going to say, hey, I'm trying to win too, right? So they're going to do something. So a counter poke is intentionally made to counter what we think they're going to do, what type of move, what move they're going to do. And we know that our whiff punish is a bait. We bait them to whiff, or, you know, perhaps we're ready for them to whiff. Like, we might say, huh, this guy has weak spacing. He always whiffs his moves way too far away. He wouldn't hit me from that range, so we might just let him walk up and make his mistake, but we're still ready, right? We're anticipating. That's a whiff punish. So how can we apply conditioning and rhythm to the first two, where we go first? Well, it's pretty simple. It's almost exactly the same, right? So say I go, okay, walk, medium punch, walk, medium punch. Now, I'm making these examples overly obvious, but if you pay attention, even if you watch a replay of someone, you will be able to see that they have a very distinct and clear rhythm of action, right? So I say walk, medium punch, walk, medium punch, walk, medium punch, right? So Chun-Li might expect me to do this, right? Walk, medium punch. So I'm poking here, walk, medium punch, walk, medium punch. Let's just say, for the sake of this example, he is going to walk backwards, right? So I walk. His response is, hey, I don't want to get into that medium punch range. I don't want any part of this. And then he walks backwards, right? So I could go walk, 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 and just follow him to the corner. I'm sure you've seen this at least once, especially versus a grappler player, where Zangief just walks someone across the screen, right? That's because the Geef player knows that that their opponent is trying to stay in a good spacing, and if he presses something at a certain timing, he can get them to anticipate that timing, right? Stimulus, response, right? And then he can abuse that response, so he can walk them down to the corner. Or another example is, say, Chun-Li is throwing Kikoken, right? And he goes, Kikoken, wait, Kikoken, wait, Kikoken, wait. Oh, wait a minute, there's a pattern there. So if he goes Kikoken and I jump, I know he's going to wait. or I mean, he goes Kikoken, wait, wait. I know Kikoken is coming after because I've observed this pattern, right? So I can just jump in on this second Kikoken. And it's the same thing with poking, right? I could stagger, 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 pause, throw, right? This is how tick throws and shimmies work, right? This is part of neutral, and part of footsies, believe it or not, is I can tick, throw, right? Tick, throw. Or I could tick, nothing, and I could walk backwards, and then they whiff, because they anticipate the rhythm of throw, right? Tick, throw. And I tick, nothing. Then they whiff, and I can punish them, right? So that we can apply manipulation of rhythm to our pokes and our counter pokes just as well. Pretty much in the same exact way. So to put this together and to play footsies, right? We start out. We both have a game plan, right? We know what we want to do. We have general ideas of the matchup, what moves are good versus what moves. One of us starts by poking. The other one responds by either establishing their a poke themselves or a counter poke, right? All the meanwhile, we're manipulating spacing and our rhythm to attempt to bait the opponent into something we can counter, right? So the most obvious one is manipulating your timings of pokes and your spacing by walking back and forth to get them to whiff, right? But you can also, manipulate your walking and blocking to get them to do something, then go for a counter poke, right? And during that, right, we're both manipulating spacing, manipulating our rhythm, our timing, and our patterns, right? And we're starting with pokes, and then I respond with a counter poke to his poke, and then he looks for a whiff punish. All this time, we're observing that entire situation and trying to get a read onto the opponent so that we can overall get an idea of what they want to do and then adjust our game plan accordingly, right? Because, I've said we have a simple set of sequences that leads us to this. So let's say we walk up, right? We walk up into their medium punch range. We see them do medium punch, right? Excuse me. What are we doing here? There we go. We walk up into their medium punch range. We see them stick that out. Okay. All right. We have an idea of when they're going to do it. They're going to do it now. All right. Then I'll counter that, right? Because I know the timing. I'm walking up, testing this range. Right, I'm intentionally doing it similarly. I'm giving them a pattern to hang on to so that I can stimulate a predictable response. Then, all right, so I go for countering this, and the counter I choose to this is something that's going to lead into my predetermined game plan, and the game plan I want is to just go for this target combo over and over again, right? Because it leads me into a good Oki situation. So I choose my button, knock them down, then I'm in situation to go for this again. That's basically footsies. That's how you start out. That's how you determine what buttons you're going to use, what pokes, counter pokes, whiff punishing, and how you're going to play in neutral, right? Now, the opponent is doing all of this at the same time you are. So you have to be very careful because there's a lot of I know that you know that we know that this counters this, so I'm going to do this, blah, 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 blah. You know that I know the counter to your counter to counter, counter. Ha-ha, wake up, sweep. Right? So a very skillful element of this is trying to figure out what your opponent is observing and giving them dead ends or red herrings, right? So my overall game plan might be to just go for this again, but say they do a very good job of preventing that, right? I might need to adjust a little bit. I don't have to totally abandon it, but maybe for a little while I give them something else to think about, right? Say maybe Alright, I want to go for this over and over again, but that's not working right now because they're really countering me. Let's just hang back and fireball. Wait. Fireball. Wait. Fireball. Wait. Oh, now they're looking at my fireball. I bet they're not looking for me to walk up anymore because I've given them another pattern. I've changed my style up. Oh, let's go back to my original game plan, right? That is Street Fighter. That's neutral. That's footsies. It's very complex, but it's made up of a bunch of simple elements. It's actually quite hard to talk about because there's a lot of nebulous or context-dependent things in there, things you're doing, but that's basically it. I tried explaining it twice. It's not exactly easy to explain, but I hope that was a somewhat succinct crash course into how that thought process and how one can go about basically formulating a way to play. There's probably some things I missed. I'm actually planning to, write this out and make a more reasonably paced, reasonably extensive Did my V-trigger just disappear? Reasonably. Whoa. What's that stream saying? What? What? Reasonably comprehensive version of this, but there's some rambling. The title is this is the short explanation. Believe me, this is the crash course. This is the, hey, these are some ideas you could think. Each concept has on nearly infinite depth because it's so based on each specific situation, right? Like, for example, there's a piece of advice I often give called that goes like ask when, not why, right? So let's say, for example, every time I knock down Chun-Li, he wakes up with sweep, right? And I try to shimmy him, and he sweeps me. I could go, why would you do that? And I could try to figure out, like, oh, perhaps this happened, and then he saw this and that, and I can get mired in this complex amount of thoughts and all this heavy thinking, and it's taking away my brain power from figuring out what he's doing. You don't need to ask when, right? We know that the game state is a stimulus and it causes a response, right? Or you don't need to ask why, I mean. We know that the game state is a stimulus and he's going to have a response. So say we sweep him, the stimulus is he gets swept, knocked down, the response is to sweep. We only need to know when, right? Cause, effect. Why is generally irrelevant 90% of the time. Because his brother's mom's dog's uncle's girlfriend could always just only ever go for shimmy. So his why could be some obscure reason and it always works, so he just does it, right? But if we know when, we are much better armed to deal with this situation and we're not expending extraneous brain power on it. You see what I'm saying? So, like, this becomes more and more complex. It doesn't become more difficult to grasp or like crazy or anything like that. It's just complex. There's just many things, right? Like for example, okay, what is a good poke? Well, a good poke is something we want to go for first that furthers our game plan. That's why we press this in neutral, right? But also we need to know about the frame data, the startup, the recovery. We need to know the shape of the hitbox. We need to know the shape of the opponent's hitboxes, the startup of their moves relative to our recovery, the recovery of their moves, right? So we need to know all this extra information to zero in on what is the perfect poke for this situation, right? Same thing with a counter poke, right? Counter poke is even more important to know the hitboxes and frame data and stuff because you're trying to press a move into their move or likely into their move. We also need to know what buffers into what is optimal damage, right? What our resources are. Like, so for example, what's up, puppy? I see you, man. Yeah, we had an explanation, a very rambly explanation of neutral and footsies and things like that. And now we're just talking about how complex it can get, right? So for example, let's just say that this is a good poke, right? I'm counter poking. So let's say I want to do this, right? Now, let's say Chun-Li's doing crouching medium kick. Okay, this is a contextual example. This is a situation where what is your good poke can change, right? So I poke with this, right? Firstly, this is hard to get, right? I could use this. This will always go over the low. I don't even really have to time it that well. I can just do it, right? So maybe this is a good poke in this situation. Maybe it's better to throw this out first, right? However, let's just say I have my V trigger bar, right? I have V meter is full. We can see on the bottom of the screen, my V meter is full. So, all right, well now I can do this into V trigger, but why does my V trigger keep disappearing, by the way? V timer, there we go. So, if I have my V bar, I do this to hit her over kick. Okay, alright, that's not bad. But I know for a fact that this doesn't buffer into fireball. And if I hit my fireball, I get a much bigger combo. So now, given this context, given this situation where my V-bar is full, this becomes the poke I want to use here, right? It's also the counter poke I want to use here. So previously, this was the counter poke and the poke. Now this becomes the counter poke and the poke, right? So if I say I don't want to use V-bar, say my V-bar is full, but I don't want to use it, right? I could poke with this, but I definitely don't want to counter poke with this, because if I hit this, I'm going to get less of a combo, right? So if I hit this, I get a fat combo. Oops. Right? I get the fireball into down fierce. Oh, mine. Oh, man. But you see what I'm saying, right? My execution notwithstanding. But you can see how what is best to do changes on the context. And this is different for like every matchup. So neutral gets real complicated real fast, but it's all simple concepts. All similarly applied simple concepts, right? You start with a game plan. You identify what moves further your game plan, right? Then you observe the opponent, find the way to apply those moves best, apply those moves, and pursue your game plan. Make adjustments based on your observations. Rinse, repeat. Short explanation. Yeah. What's up, old school reflexes? I see you, man. What's good? Excuse me. I can, if there's any specific questions, I can endeavor to answer those as well. But that's it. It's a very difficult thing to make succinct, and explaining it all at once is only. I've learned now, explaining it all at once is only ever a exercise in getting stuff real tangled up. Now, it's important to note that we saw all these parts before, right? Like we saw, okay, starting with a game plan, right? Finding the buttons that we want. We find our pokes, we find our counter pokes, we find our whiff punishes, right? We find ways to get those to go into our game plan, right? And then we manipulate space and timing, right? We manipulate our space and timing to further our goal, our objective. All of those separate things are playing neutral, right? Those are playing neutral, but they are not necessarily playing footsies. Footsies is all of those things simultaneously together, right? So it is entirely plausible that you can be playing neutral and not playing footsies, right? You can be doing any one of those things separate from the others. So I guess my whole objective here, or the point I wanted to kind of end on or make clear with this big, long, double explanation is that neutral is playing the game in a neutral state with the objective of getting an advantage, and footsies is a very specific action you can take in neutral. Okay. How would you describe the various game plans in Street Fighter V? Grappler, rushdown, zoners, etc. Okay, so in Street Fighter, or in 2D games in general, because of the way neutral is, you can apply characters' moves in any way you desire. You can do it any way you want. So, for example, Ken is a very balanced character, right? He can rush down, he can zone, he can grapple, I guess you could say, like smother the opponent, right? But you can play a grappler character in a way that's zoning. They may not be strong at that, right? Like, for example, Ken's fireball is okay. It's a pretty good fireball. It covers horizontal space. And his uppercuts are really good because they each cover a different distance on the screen. So Ken can uppercut you very far away from pretty much half of the screen if you are trying to jump over this fireball, right? So he can zone, but it might not necessarily be the most powerful zoning, right? The same thing with like Zangief. Zangief might not have a fireball, but Zangief could zone you, right? So it might just be weaker or more limited. Like Zangief might only be able to use crouching jab and hard kick, right? Or hard punch. He can still zone, but it just might be weaker. So you can employ any kind of tactic with any kind of character. It's just that some characters have strengths. So we'll call Geef a grappler because his strengths are grappling, right? He's good at pressuring you into the corner, preventing you from moving, walking you down, holding you there, and then getting the grab on you, right? His main thing is grabs. So he punishes blocking best. He's really good at punishing blocking. So we'll call him a grappler. But that doesn't mean that Geef can't zone or Geef can't rush down, right? It's just that his strengths are that. So you're not necessarily limited to whatever archetype your character is, right? Now, we know that any character can employ any type of game plan or any type of, strategy, zoning, rushing down, grabbing, right? And we know that characters have different strengths and weaknesses in those. So you're more like for example, Chun-Li is very good at controlling horizontal space, right? She's got good mid-range pokes. She has excellent move speed. But you'll see that like 90% of Chun-Li players online just ungity-bungity rush it down, right? So even though Chun-Li's main strength is not exactly rushing down, you can still do that with her. It's just much stronger to do what the character is naturally suited for. And a lot of times in fighting games, when a character seems like something is obviously strong with them, obviously strong with them, they might be good at that, but they might also be good at other things. Like, for example, Ken is supposed to be a rushdown character, but he's very extremely well balanced, right? He's extremely medium everything, right? Like, he's pretty good at zoning, pretty good at rushdown, pretty good at, you know, in between. Pretty good at grabbing people over and over. So your game plan is really player dependent. Like, game plans, like you're talking, if you wanted to categorize them as those types, like rushdown, zoning, or go for grappling and stuff like that, that's really pretty much dependent on the player, not so much the character. Yo, what's up, Maddie? I see you. What's good? If you are looking for ways to categorize things, excuse me. If you are looking for ways to categorize things, you can kind of chunk offense and defense into different categories, right? General strategic categories. As a momentarily aside, yeah, we talked about footsies, Maddie. It was a 1-hour explanation, a crash course, a little bit of more than a little rambling, and then we ran it back and we explained it for another hour all over again. Now I'm just answering a few questions, just hanging out. So let's talk about categorizations of strategies, right? So because we know every character can employ every type of strategy, because every player can just control that character how they want, right? It's like think of it like a knife, right? You have a knife, like a kitchen knife, like a chef knife, right? If you want it, you could use that to pry something open. You could use it to unscrew a screw. You could use it to cut. You could use it to shave. You could use it to, I don't know, start a fire. You could use it to cut paper. You know, you can apply the tool in any way you want. Characters are just sets of tools, ways to interact with the game, right? So it's difficult to say, like, oh, a grappler character can only employ a grappling strategy, because that's not necessarily true. But if you wanted to chunk things into kind of reasonable categories, you can start with general strategic things, like, for example, offense, right? Offense and defense. So generally, I like to think about not necessarily rock, paper, scissors, but 3 things that counter each other. Kind of like rock, paper, scissors, right? So on offense, you can pursue the opponent, right? You can bait the opponent, right? Or you can pressure the opponent, right? And pressure is like just, you know, block strings continuing to follow them. And on defense, you can play defense via evasion, which means you could move away. You could evade their move, right? So you could jump, backdash, do an evasive special move like Colleen can do the turnaround thing or something like that, right? You can evade, right? You can contest on defense, right? So, like, say, for example, they're doing that type of thing to you, that staggered pressure. You can contest them by, you know, just hitting a button, taking your turn back. Or you can play defense via attrition, which is just wait it out, just chill, right? Wait for them to push themselves away or choose a different option so that you have a chance to then get out of the defensive situation back into neutral. So we can see that defense via evasion loses to offense via pursuit, right? We can also see that defense via contestation, and now contesting also means like doing like a throw, right? So for example, if I go to throw and Chun-Li chooses to tech, she's contesting my throw, right? In this sense. So that will lose to baiting, right? That's a very obvious one. If I bait Chun-Li to do this, or for example, if I bait, what mic do I use? I can hook you up with the link later. I'll link you via Discord. It's a newer NW700. It's pretty cheap. We're planning to replace it soon. But I can bait Chun to do something, right? So I could do like a frame trap and make him frame trap, right? It's the same as bait. Traps are set with bait. Frame trap. So I could do like frame trap him somehow, right? I can manually time my frame trap. I could do an automatically timed frame trap. You know, just a string that has a frame trap in it. I can bait him, so that will defeat contestation. I could also bait him by walking back, right? Or like, say for example, I think Chun-Li is gonna do EX spinning bird kick. I could walk up and act like I'm gonna to put down the pressure on him, right? Because contestation will beat pressure, right? I can walk up and pretend I'm gonna pressure him and then bait him, and then he'll do EX, and then I'll defeat him. And if he does defense via attrition, I may have said something wrong there, but let's just move on anyway. If he does defense via attrition, like he just waits, right? I can pressure him again, but that will beat baiting, right? So if he just blocks and I bait him, I just gave up my opportunity to mount offense, right? Because I performed a bait. But if he does defense via attrition and I continue to pressure him, I might be able to steal my turn back or get gray health, right? I might be able to build up gray health and go for another form of offense. So you see how this gray health builds up, right? This is Street Fighter V specific, but that's like the generally way you can kind of chunk those three things together. Kind of like rock, paper, scissors. 3 types of offense, 3 types of defense. That's one way I kind of categorize things. But I generally try not to categorize things too much because it can make it difficult for you to see other options. Like for example, let's look at a Street Fighter V specific thing that might lead you to believe, might make you think that there's nothing you can do, right? So where is Sagat? Here he is. So Ken versus Sagat, right? Sagat's medium kick is really, really good. And this can be the pitfalls of just trying to categorize things too much and not thinking contextually, right? I guess closed-mindedness, you could say, with your options. So let's get Sagat to do standing medium kick. So in Street Fighter V, there is a priority system, which means that if 2 normals are to trade, like they hit at the same time, the higher normal will win, right? So medium buttons will beat light buttons, heavy buttons will beat medium buttons. This move is super good hitbox and hurtbox. So I'm like, oh man, what do I do? How do I counterpoke this, right? How do I poke? What do I counterpoke with? I can't really whip punish it. It's so fast. Actually, with this move, the way the hitbox on this move is shaped, I can counterpoke this with my jab. And if I had only thought in terms of, oh, well, Street Fighter V, there's the priority system, so I'm stuck to these categories of moves, I would miss this. You can actually counterpoke into this move with your jab from a certain distance because of the way the hitbox is shaped. Also, you can counterpoke it with this, but it's really hard. There we go. So there's that as an example. I think I need to get down to better organizing my thoughts on the neutrals and footsies. But the explanation, definitely the double explanation was there. I hope that could help some people. I know everyone has their own way of describing it, but I really think that there is objective, write it down. Yeah, there's going to be you know, I've definitely learned my lesson not to announce things like, hey, I'm going to release a video at this date. And then, you know, I'm struggling to work on it. I've definitely learned that lesson. So I'm not going to say when it's going to be done, but there will be a series of videos entitled Street Fighter is a Skill that explain in detail quantifiable, repeatable methods and techniques you can employ to learn the fundamentals of the game. And by fundamentals, I mean things like reading and conditioning opponents, right? Understanding how you can apply this in a match. Having a game plan built of reasonable sequences, right? How to build game plans. How to, you know, manipulate and apply the concept of rhythm in a match. And things like that. Like the things you actually always do no matter what, right? Like everybody talks about, oh, frame data and, you know, don't die, like, but no one actually explains, like, well, the reason you don't want to do this is because the risk versus reward, and you have to measure your risk versus reward given the context of the situation based on what reads you have on the opponent, right? So say, for example, I'm playing against Sagat, right? This is an example of some a very common situation when fundamental knowledge or not fundamental, but when common advice fails, right? Everyone's going to explain, they're going to say, don't jump because jumping will get you killed. Obviously, don't jump versus Sagat because jumping will get you killed, right? Well, let's say I do jump versus Sagat and I see, oh, he didn't anti-air me. All right, we play a little bit more. I jump again. Oh, no anti-air, right? Now I've observed this pattern he has of not anti-airing me. So let's say it comes down to a critical moment in the match. Sagat, you know, he's not even throwing tiger shots, right? He's just using normal attacks, right? He's not doing nothing. Well, maybe I jump at him, get a frame trap, right? I get myself into this extra good situation because I paid attention previously to what he was doing, right? I've made these reads, I used a little bit of critical thinking, and I determined that even though this is possibly the biggest risk I can take in this situation, the reward may outweigh the risk, and given the context, I've determined that the risk on this is low, right? This is just like a theoretical example, but things like that happen all the time in Street Fighter, and people generally kind of fail to explain them, and I wish to explain them. I wish to explain why that works, why the game is so based on context and different situations. I really think that's because everyone who's ever gained any kind of reason, like any kind of respectable or admirable skill level in a fighting game is an autodidact. They taught themselves, right? Every single pro player for a fighting game, any fighting game, is 99% self-taught. So because we all learn best in different ways, and we all learn and go about learning in different ways, it's hard for us to teach each other. So people have a lot of difficulty explaining themselves, and it's like my quest to break this down into reasonable, repeatable, quantifiable methods and techniques that people can use to actually learn how to play fighting games beyond, like, go study frame data, go look at hitboxes, and then do your special moves 100 times and figure it out, right? Because if you are a good player fundamentally, you can pick up and play any character in any fighting game without extensive details, without the most minute knowledge of, like, crazy techniques and tips and hitboxes and frame data and things like that. I'm not saying that those aren't important. They are very important. But I mean, come on. Good fighting game players are good when new games come out and nobody knows what anything is about, right? So there's reasons that they are good, and that's because they have these skills practiced, and I guess you could kind of say like they're soft skills, right? Like, you know, it's a lot about observation, pattern recognition, you know, some social psychology stuff, but there are ways you can practice and develop these skills. And it's like I'm on some shit. I'm trying to be able to spread that knowledge and the idea that being good at a fighting game is something you can train. You know, you don't have to just be born good or have like that Gosu sense. Be bold. You're right. Anyway, I think that's enough rambling for me. This was supposed to be a short session. Thanks for hanging out, guys. I really appreciate you guys hanging out. I really appreciate all the questions too. Thanks for staying through the rambling. I plan to do more things like this. More, I don't know what you would call them. Theory crafting, theory fighting. More conceptual streams, just basic. I don't want to call them lectures because they're not really. It's more of like an interactive thing, but we'll see. Look out for more of these in the future. Anyway, that's it for me today. That's it for me today. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. You guys are awesome. Have a wonderful Monday afternoon, Labor Day, right? Or wherever you are in the world, whatever time it is, have the best possible time. As you can see on the screen, I stream Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays, all starting at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's the United States of America, East Coast. Usually I stream longer, but today is a short stream. We play Street Fighter, we play League of Legends. Sometimes we stream other games. I'm playing a lot of KOTOR, the Star Wars games lately. We'll probably play Street Fighter again sometime this week, maybe next Monday. We'll see. But anyway, I'm rambling. Catch you guys later. Thanks for hanging out. You guys are awesome. See ya.